For this review, I'm going to be talking about a AR15 enhanced Ambi safety selector switch. This is a product made by Trinity Force. Their website is trinityforce.com. The Trinity Force ambidextrous safety selector can be installed on any standard AR lower receiver and will function when deployed on either the right or left side of the rifle. The right-hand lever has been shortened to accommodate right-handed shooters. The weight of this particular item is 0.7 of an ounce. The width is 0.5 inches. The length is 1.5 inches. It is high-strength steel and it is black in color. The street price on this is about $15, which is a price I found on opticsplanet.com, which happens to be a Trinity Force dealer. Ships in this POP package right here. Comes with a Allen key for installation, and this is sealed. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up off camera, and let's actually take a look at the selector. All right. You can see this particular design. You've got the selector barrel, and you've got the really short selector lever for the right side, and you have the standard length for the left side. They basically just have a little arrow, and I do believe these ends, by touching them and feeling them here, they are a polymer end with a standard steel barrel shank and a single hex key bolt right there. Very good texturing on this, so your fingers are definitely not going to slip on this. One bolt to remove. This is a little different from some of the other selectors on the market. Some of the other selectors on the market, both selector switches are removable, so you have a bare barrel, a bare selector shank. This particular selector is affixed to this, so it does not come off. And we've got one really small hex bolt. Again, installing something like this, you would definitely want to make sure that when you do put this together, you put a little dab of blue Loctite on this bolt, tighten it down. You don't need to put a lot of torque on it, but the blue Loctite will ensure that this doesn't loosen up and fall off and you lose one of your selector levers. So what I've seen so far is really nice. And we're going to go ahead and install this on a AR15 lower receiver, and I'll show you that process. All right, on our lower receiver here, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to remove your pistol grip, and you're going to want to be careful when removing that, because the selector spring and the selector detent are held in place by your grip. Now, depending upon what grip you have, you may be using a flat-bladed screwdriver for the bolt. You may be using a hex key. In my case here, I have a hex key to remove the bolt that's in here. And I'll normally turn the receiver upside down and remove the bolt, and then slowly remove the grip, making sure to capture the spring. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you the removal process. Okay, I went ahead and removed the bolt, or I loosened up the bolt all the way. And if you're holding this upside down, you can just lift off your grip, and either the selector spring will be captured right here inside of the recessed hole in your grip, or it will drop right out. Sometimes it'll stay inside the lower receiver, but you want to make sure you don't lose this. So we're always real cautious about that. Do it slowly. And there goes our bolt. The detent is right here, and we're actually going to need to remove that. And normally what you can do is just tilt it upside down, tap it a little bit, maybe even move the selector lever, and the detent should fall out. You want to do this in a safe area because these little parts have a tendency to get lost when you go to remove them. Now in this particular situation, what I'm removing here on this Aero Precision lower is a Noveski ambidextrous selector, and this requires a different removal process. If you had a standard selector lever, at this point, once the detent is removed, you should be able to more or less just slide it out. You may have to jiggle the trigger assembly a little bit, push down on it and so on, and to get it out. This requires a different mechanism. I got a really small screw right there I have to remove. I'm going to remove that and kind of show you how that process works with this particular selector. But for most standard ones, it should just slide right out. Alright, so what I did was I removed the right side selector, so we have just this left side one with the barrel. And basically to get this out, it's just a matter of just kind of twisting it and wiggling it, and it will slide right out. So that's the process for removal of your selector. Now the installation of this new one is going to be roughly the same here. We're basically going to put it in, and you may have to wiggle it to get it in a little bit. And we're going to hold it in place. And we're going to flip our lower receiver over and install the other selector lever, like so. And drop our hex bolt in, or hex screw, and use the included Allen wrench to tighten it down. Again, you don't need to use a lot of torque on this. Put the blue Loctite on it, which I didn't do in this process, but I'll do that later. And of course, right now the selector is going to move somewhat freely because we don't have our selector detent in place. I like to just confirm that things work with okay, and everything appears to work. Now what we need to do at this point is put our detent back in. I like to make sure that the levers are parallel with the safe setting right there, so the detent drops in. And we're going to hold that and take our detent and just drop the detent down. And we're ready to put our grip back on. Make sure that you've got your selector spring in the detent hole. And of course it will fall out if you're not careful. It's normally not going to stick in this hole because there's just not enough depth to hold it. So you can maybe do this at an angle a little bit. And make sure that the actual selector spring drops into the hole on top of the detent. And then push down. I also like to make sure that at this point the selector works, which it does. And when I go to install the bolt, again, we're doing this all upside down. I'll actually hold this like this with my thumb over the front part of the grip to hold it in place. And then I will drop my bolt in and tighten that down. I'll try to do that on camera. Normally I do that in my lap. Doing it on camera is always a challenge. And you don't need to put a lot of torque on that. Make sure it's hand tight. and make sure the grip is fully flush with your lower receiver. And then go back in and test. You should have positive lockup with your selector. Test it, make sure that it works. And it does. This works as it should. It's got a good textured grip on it. I like that. It's definitely easy to manipulate. This is a 90-degree selector. The markings on this lower receiver are for a 60-degree selector, but this is a full 90-degree selector. So it works as it should. And then there's, of course, the backside right there. If you're a right-hander, you've got, easy access to that. So that's the installation of the enhanced Ambi safety selector made by Trinity Force. And that's going to wrap up this review and installation.